All right, guys, let's begin then. Um, so I went through this really briefly in class last week, but I'm probably gonna have to slow it down for you. But I won't go through all the margins part because you guys already are well versed in that. Basically, I just set up a 36 by 36 sheet. And I put a 1 inch margin around all four sides, and then I put a 1 inch margin horizontally in the center. And I started in the center with the vertical margin for the yeah. But I moved it over to be approximately what I want my size to be. I will say this: scale of your drawings generally is incredibly important, but for our purposes here today. Um, this is a in some cases it's merely a gestural assignment, and so the scale isn't really all that critical. But if you can, it would actually behoove you to try and work in an actual scale. So our site is 100 feet, and so if you wanted to break that down to something that's a little bit more palatable, we have let's see, that's four. What do we have? That's going up to like 14. I'll do this more accurately in a bit, but if that's a weird scale. Let's.
36 by 36 inches.
Yeah, but I'm trying to see how big I actually set this field to be. But anyway, if we wanted to do like for instance, 1/8 inch equals a foot, but we have a site that's 100 feet wide. It's 8 times 0.125, and that means that at 1/8 inch equals a foot, we would have to make this 12.5 inches wide, which is not that far off from what we have here. I probably will go back in and adjust it accurately, but for now, that's going to be kind of appropriate. All right. So you guys already know the export process, but I'll walk through it with you again real fast. Let me turn this off temporarily. You basically take, oh, I need to actually bake those. Sorry. I'll bake this. You guys will have to go through this as well, so you make sure that you bake everything that you're working with. Mod frame. Mod glazing. And if you wanted to, you could actually go and cut a floor plan view using a clipping plane, but for me, I'm just going to do my aerial view like this. This is just a really basic one. One thing I will do to make it a little bit cleaner is I'm going to turn my ISO curves off. If you turn those off, you won't have like lines that are stretching across silly things. That's a line I don't want anymore. So you take this, you do a make 2D. Oh no, I'm sorry, not that. I wanted to do the graphic one. Sorry. We're doing our diagram. And that. There we go. So this, grab that and do a make 2D. And in this one, I'm actually going to maintain source. Sorry, I got so screwed up. I started jumping into doing a plan of my model, but then I went back to my diagram. In the diagram, you don't have to do a make 2D. Just select it and go to File, Export Selected. I'm going to put this in a sample folder. Let's see, drop folder, Kevin Gerling sample, source, and I'll call this CAD diagram. Now I'm going to go back into Illustrator, and I forget whether or not this current form, oh, that's, shoot. I keep leading you astray, guys. Remember to, when you save that, remember to make sure that it's a DWG file. My apologies. Default scheme should be okay. Go into Illustrator, say File, Place. Oh, File Open. It's like I'm brand new at this. Gosh. The reason I opened it is because it flattened all the layers when I placed it in the sheet. but if you open it and then you copy and paste it over, it'll retain all the layers that you have over here, and you can post-process those. So I did all of that really fast because by now you guys are used to this, and you know that you can, pull it over to the corner and then drag it down and lock it. Although I think that's still off. But this is the key, guys. So all of that was really fast, but this is the part that I really want you to learn. Here, we're going to actually create the diagram. So what that means for me is that I need to think about the hierarchy of information that goes into my diagram. The first of which is obviously the border that goes around the whole thing is something to at least consider. So I don't know where that lives right now, though. So there it is. I'll rename this to border, and I'll make that a black line. And for me, I'm going to leave my border relatively thin. And then I'm just going to keep working through them, really. This one is my red lines. So these are the radials. Let's select those. I'm going to make them black. And I'm also going to make them a little bit thicker, but those are going to be dotted lines. I don't want them to really show up too much, so I'll make it rounded, dashed with a 2.2 point. It's a little too tight, so grab that again and maybe change the 2 point to like a 6 point. There we go. All right, so on to the next one after that. These are going to be my arcs. The arcs are supposed to actually be boundaries, if you recall, from the actual conversation, and so those are going to be a thicker, almost darker line. So let's make those also black. Actually, I'm going to make those gray because these, I eventually decided in my design that those are going to be concrete forms, and I'll actually make them pretty thick. So like a 3 point is going to serve my purposes okay for that. And then, I'm going to keep moving up here. This one right here actually wound up falling to the background, so I'm going to just make that a black line. And actually, I'll make that let's make it a red line. Because I'm not sure what role that's going to play yet, but it was my primary axial zone. So then, last but not least, I have my actual pathways and stuff that were going through the space, and so those are absolutely a primary element. So I'm gonna see how they read as just a thick black line, and then decide. I do kind of think that they need some resolution to them, so I'm actually going to go back in and draw in some lines that are going to close it off. So I'll go from this point to the anchor, from that point to this anchor, close that off there, this one there, this one here, there to there, and there to there. So finally, I'll select all of those again. I'm going to make that a live paint group that you guys now know how to do. So I hit K, and I can fill that in. So with that, I'm actually going to go back to some gray colors, and I'm going to make it probably a thinner line, like a 1 for now. Let me just select that, make that a 1. Go back to K, fill it in gray, fill that in. It's a little too thick, actually, too dark, I should say. So I'm going to make that a 1 with a gray line, and then K, and I'll fill that in with a lighter gray. Even lighter. There we go. So I think I'm going to jump back in and really bump this line up a bit as well. I'm also going to change the order and pull it up top. and increase that to like a 3. There we go. So, so really what we're trying to do, in case you're curious here, guys, is we're trying to create a diagram. This is a diagram of what our design became, and it's based off of the original analysis that we made. So this is my design adaptation of the above system. What questions do you have?
Do you remember you guys questions?
No?
So our design inspiration came from something.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So the idea is that while the rules that you establish through your research should be somewhat self-evident in the diagram that you see, and remember, I've asked you to boil them down to really simple ideas, so I don't expect your diagram to necessarily be mega beautiful or the most crisp and clear thing that has ever been designed. What I want to be able to see is elements of the original analysis. So, for instance, what you see here is that we have, these urban split edges, although I kind of cut it off, but you see that right there. You see nodal points, which is where all of these axes are starting to sort of, either grow from or coalesce at. And then you see the arc type boundary that creates a field for action, and that's what you see up there, right? So there's a graphic relationship in mine. There may not be necessarily a strict graphic relationship in yours. It could be a little bit more interpretive, but that's the intent. Any other questions? Okay, so next up I'm going to do a quick program diagram, which is going to be much shorter than this one.